We're stepping inside the Indiana home of designer and creator Britany Arnesen. It was once an abandoned foreclosure that she and her family have transformed over the past decade. What began as a budget-friendly starter house has become a deeply personal project filled with character, creativity, and countless DIY moments. Every room carries a story of reinvention, and every detail reflects Britany's thoughtful blend of vintage charm and practical design. Britany's home blends the old and the new in a way that feels effortless. Antique pieces sit alongside personal mementos, practical solutions meet playful touches, and every project reflects her belief that home should evolve with those who live in it. To watch Britany's episode ad-free, where she shows her most recent DIY office project, scan the QR code, or you can go to homeworthyplus.com to join so you're able to watch ad-free episodes. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. I'm Allison Kenworthy, the founder of Homeworthy, and we take you inside the world's most beautifully decorated homes and introduce you to the brilliant people who live there.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Liz Lang. Welcome to Grey Gardens.
Click the join button below to access all of our latest episodes ad-free and watch extended cuts of this and other homes, opening the doors to new rooms and exclusive content featuring our beloved hosts.
I can't wait to see, I'm so excited.
And if you're looking to shop items inspired by this and other Homeworthy tastemakers, be sure to use the product links below or scan the QR code on screen to find fabulous furniture, coffee table books, and accessories that can transform your house into a home.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Britany. Welcome to my home in Indiana. I can't wait to show you around. My name is Britany Arnesen. I'm an interior designer and content creator. Welcome to my home in Indiana. We've lived here for just over 10 years, and we ended up here because we were looking for foreclosure to fix up, and we just so happened to find one in this neighborhood and knew that it was a good school district. My daughter was just over a year old at that point, so I was kind of like planning ahead. We weren't sure that we would necessarily stay in this house, or if, we would just fix it up and sell it and move on, but we just wanted to make sure. And so it was like in the right price range and, pretty decent neighborhood, so we went for it. And then, the rest is history. We completely remodeled the house inside and out. Welcome to my living room. This is probably the space where I spend the majority of my time. When we actually first bought this house, this little area right here was the living room, and so we removed several walls here to make it the big, nice open space that you see today. I decided to go with pink for the walls because I have always just been really drawn to the color, but also feel like it creates like a really nice, warm, cozy, inviting sort of atmosphere. Obviously the trim on the walls was not original to the house, so that's something that I did myself, as well as like the keyhole archway here. I designed how I wanted the trim to look in a way that I felt kind of fit with the style of the house a little bit, because I know that that's kind of more of a traditional look. And so, with this house being like a 1960s Midwestern ranch, it didn't necessarily really fit with it, but it was something that I just really personally like the looks of. Another element actually that I designed and created myself is the little nook by the front door right here. Because initially, since we don't have a designated entryway really, and I wasn't really sure exactly how I wanted to use the space and how I wanted things to be arranged, I thought that it would be kind of cool to have something like that, just with like a little bowl or, you know, little container to sit our keys and stuff. So it was like, I feel like a lot of the DIYs that I've done in this house have been because it's so small and trying to figure out the best way to use the space, or also because we have such a lack of storage. So it was just like another little element. Like a lot of the times when I share it on social media, people think that it's like an original, like little telephone nook. But I actually got the idea from my dad's house, which was built, I think, in maybe like the 20s or 30s. And he had a little telephone nook in there. And I thought it was really cute. You know, I always liked it. And so I thought, oh, that'd be kind of a cool thing to have by the front door. And then a lot of times we actually have a couple of keys here. We'll put our keys and my husband will put his wallet there when he comes home. This console table is something that I actually bought from CB2 years ago. And then I modified it recently and added this little, you know, design here just to kind of make it a little bit more interesting. So in these baskets is where we keep most of my kids' shoes, because we don't have a lot of storage in this house, and we have this tiny little storage closet here. And since my kids have so many shoes and my husband and I both have a lot of shoes, you know, the closet is completely jam-packed. So we have these baskets here just so the kids both have, you know, an easy way to put their shoes away as well. So, you know, no excuses like with leaving the shoes laying in front of the front door, which is what they tend to like to do. The rug is a relatively new purchase. I tend to be more drawn towards jute rugs than anything else, just because I feel like they hide dirt really well. Having 2 kids and, you know, pets, that's something that, you know, is a necessity in our household. And I really love that this rug is like sort of like a checkerboard pattern, but not like, you know, overtly checkerboard. And just like the warmth and texture of it, it's like there's a lot of, you know, a lot going on. Like it almost looks like it was like hand braided even. I just think it's really pretty. So the couch, I actually just got the couch a couple of weeks ago. I waited probably about 8 months for the couch to show up. And I have only recently really been experimenting with color. And I find that the more I add, the more I want. And I just really love this particular shade of blue. You'll probably notice it peppered throughout the rest of the house as well. Just very drawn to it. And blue has also, in addition to pink, has also been one of my favorite colors for about as long as I can remember. I'm really, really happy with how, you know, everything's looking right now. Kind of like moving more towards like more color and more pattern. And, you know, I feel like in general, you know, that seems to be the trend right now in the design world, as opposed to like the very like neutral and minimalist look that was popular like about 5 years ago. I just love like just playing with things. Being creative is essentially like an adult way of playing, I think. And, you know, it's just a prime example of that. Like and even since I was a child, I always loved arranging things in a way that I found visually pleasing. So like this is just kind of, you know, another example of that. The piano is actually really sentimental. It was my aunt's and she passed away. I think it's been almost a couple of years ago now. And my uncle really wanted my daughter to have her piano. So that's how we ended up with the piano, because my daughter had started taking piano lessons. She's probably taken lessons for about 3 years or so now. And now my son also takes piano lessons. So that's why we have the piano in here. It's a gorgeous, like, vintage piano. I think it was made in the 30s. So also very much like my style and like the era of design that I'm like really drawn towards. The frame was actually a DIY. The painting, the oil painting, it's a vintage oil painting. It was actually my grandpa's, so it's also sentimental. This is actually my grandpa here when he was probably a teenager or in his 20s. But so yeah, that was one of his oil paintings. A lot of the pieces that I have in my home actually were my grandpa's. He had like really fantastic taste, I think. This piece of art here, this is a print. I think, I can't remember who the artist is, but I think it's from like the early 1900s, which like obviously you can kind of tell from the style of it. But again, like the style that I tend to be like particularly drawn towards. And then, also like the black and white on this frame, I just really like the way it all kind of works together. I just rearranged this recently, like in the past week or so. So I'm really happy with how it looks together. This is like probably one of my favorite things that I own, this Art Nouveau frame right here. I just think it's just so beautiful. But yeah, just another example of one of the many DIYs that I've done in my house, and, me always like trying to improve upon things. Like I said, this is probably one of my favorite things that I own. I just think it's really pretty. This print is just like, an inexpensive print I think I got from Society 6, probably, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago or something. But I just really liked the way it's like it almost like gives the look of like a silhouette, and I feel like it kind of mimics the silhouette of her face on the frame, but like in a very like abstract modern kind of way, like as opposed to like, obviously like the frame is an antique, so I just thought that it looked really cool together. The antique radio over here is an antique tube radio. It's a GE antique tube radio. It actually still works, which is really cool, or at least it did when I got it 10 years ago and plugged it in. I have not tried to use it since then because it only gets AM frequency, and so obviously that's like not gonna do me any good, just having AM. But yeah, so, yet again, like very Art Deco looking piece. I just think it's so beautiful. And when I initially got it, my dad got it for me for my birthday. And initially when I first got it, it had the original Art Deco grill cloth. And then when my son was learning how to walk, he crawled over to it and he grabbed the grill cloth to pull up to try to stand and tore it. I actually think I have it stored in the back of the radio still, but so I was like heartbroken that it survived for like, almost 100 years, and then, of course we were the ones to ruin it. But anyway, it's a good story now. But so I used this rattan here as a replacement for the grill cloth that used to be there. And I actually just found like the most beautiful patterned fabric to replace the rattan. So I'm waiting for that to come in the mail now. So that's going to be a DIY that I plan on doing, just as soon as it arrives. Just a couple other things that I got antiquing actually at a flea market in Paris. I was there earlier this month, and I found this Art Nouveau vase, which I think is just so beautiful. And then also this plate up here that's like very Art Deco. Next, I'm gonna show you into the kitchen. Okay, so this is my kitchen, and our kitchen is one of the spaces in the house that we have remodeled twice now. Initially, when we first bought the house as a foreclosure, it was like a very small little area. I want to say that the wall was probably right about here. So just this space here was the kitchen initially, and the door to the garage was actually right about here. And so we moved it down there when we removed the walls and kind of like opened it up to where it's a much bigger space, you know, like what you see today. I feel like the mistake that we made was, you know, we bought the house and, you know, we wanted to fix it up and remodel it as affordably as possible. And, you know, considering we had to do the whole entire house, you know, that was like the top priority, was doing it as affordably as possible. And then also like we were thinking about, you know, flipping the house and thought, you know, okay, so let's try to make it to where it would be appealing to anybody. So instead of like, you know, really like putting my mark on it and, you know, making it feel like me, I, you know, just went kind of like the generic route, basically. So we ended up about 5 years after we did the first remodel, we kind of like modified everything again in here. And also I think after like living here for a period of time, I had a better idea of like how I wanted everything to look and, you know, how I was going to like use the kitchen as well, you know. Like initially, we had a big like oven microwave unit right here. And it's like, you know, after living with it for a period of time, I realized maybe that wasn't the best choice considering the fact that it's like all one big open space. It's like I wanted it to just look like one big pretty room and not necessarily like, okay, I'm sitting on my couch and if you turn around here, like there's the microwave, you know? So I decided to hide it in a cabinet. So the microwave's now in a cabinet under here. And then we had also had like a cooktop, and we had butcher block countertops, which, you know, I quickly realized like were maybe not the best choice of material for around the sink. And so, you know, it's just learning from like living here, basically, like how I wanted the space to look and to work and, you know, how I was going to use it. And so actually the remodel that I did was for the 2021 one room challenge. So I did it in 8 weeks and, you know, documented the process and everything. But yeah, like one of the main things that we did was remove the microwave and oven unit, and just get like a standalone, you know, range like this here. And at first there was like, we had like a exposed stainless steel hood, and I just, you know, I decided I wanted something like a little bit prettier than that would kind of like, you know, blend in a little bit more, and not, you know, draw your eye as much. And so we created this range hood cover. So that was a DIY. And then we added the open shelving. Before, I believe there may have been like one other like wall cabinet here that we took down, but we had some open shelving over here in the corner at first. But so we just added more, and then, you know, that's pretty much it. Actually, we replaced the countertop. We actually, this is Formica solid surface. And my husband fabricated the countertops himself in the garage when we had a garage. So that was a DIY. And then we also remade all the cabinet fronts too, because they used to be like shaker style cabinet fronts, and I wanted them to look just a little bit more like sleek and modern. And then I also designed the poles on the cabinet, and this was like before, I feel like you can find this style, pretty easily at this point, like on Etsy if you just search for it. But at the time, my husband was working as a machinist, and so he modeled what I drew and then, created them at work, like with the machines at work. The cabinet fronts here, we were trying to do it as affordably as possible. So we actually used MDF for all the cabinet fronts, which, I probably wouldn't necessarily recommend, but at the same time, it was so inexpensive to make all these cabinet fronts. And, 5 years later, they're still holding up relatively well. And you can't tell that they're made from MDF. I feel like a lot of the times, store-bought cabinet fronts are probably made out of something similar anyway. Obviously not the custom, real hardwood ones that, everybody would love to have, but, are super expensive. I really love the detail on the island over here. And I wanted it to feel more like its own piece of furniture and less like it's just the same as the rest of the kitchen cabinets over here. So that's why we decided to add the detailing onto the fronts, and then I used different knobs than the ones that we used over here. One other thing that I do want to point out, because this is also this rivals the frame for one of my favorite belongings, one of my favorite possessions that I've acquired in the past couple of years is this little Art Nouveau salesman sample cabinet. I actually found it just by searching Art Nouveau on Etsy, and it popped up. Apparently back in the day, I guess cabinet makers and, people who made furniture would, instead of obviously mass producing a bunch of them, would just make one small miniature size sample of, the different designs that they offered. And so that's what this is. So I imagine that, there are some full-size wardrobes out there somewhere that look exactly like this, which I think is really cool. I'd love to own one myself, but I'll settle for this little mini version. I have my spices in here. So, just creative storage solution, I guess, because, we obviously don't have much upper cabinet space here. So it was, what I came up with to hold my spices. But yeah, I just love it. I think it's so pretty, with the glasses actually etched. So it has the little flower detail on it. It's really a mix, I feel like. I really, really love Art Deco and Art Nouveau and, antiques and vintage. So I feel like it's really kind of a combination of vintage and modern, very whimsical. I don't know. It's funny. It's I feel like whenever it leans too much in one direction, either too many antiques or too modern, it just doesn't feel quite right to me. So I think it's really just about creating a balance. I think that also goes for neutrals and color, and also striking a balance between pattern and non-patterned pieces. And even just as far as silhouettes, I am really drawn to really kind of curvy silhouettes, but I think it's also important to kind of strike a balance there too with pieces that are maybe a little more rigid or austere and and curvy. So yeah, just really a balance. Right off the kitchen over here is our little dining nook. We actually rarely eat over here. We usually end up eating at the island in the kitchen. But so this is where the kids do a lot of crafts, actually. And I actually do a lot of crafts here too. I feel like most of the time, if you see a video of me making something on Instagram, I'm usually sitting at this table. Almost everything in here is a DIY in some regard. This dining table, I actually designed this dining table and built it during the 2021 One Room Challenge as well. When we remodeled the kitchen, this area kind of went along with it, and actually had a heart, like I had seen, I believe it was, I can't remember who the designer was, but I had seen a fluted, like a dining table with a fluted base, but I had no idea where to get one. I didn't even know like what it was called. And I remember at the time I like searched and searched trying to figure it out. And so I decided to try to, build one myself. And so, this is what I came up with. And now you can find them all over the place. But yeah, so this is a DIY. It's one of the first furniture pieces that I have built, actually. And then this like little bench over here is also a DIY. I built this a couple of years ago, and I actually just recently reupholstered it last month. But it's a storage bench, and I don't think I'll show you inside because it's so messy. I actually just organized all of my kids' art supplies and paper and stuff like that in there probably like 3 weeks ago, but I looked in there last night and it's like totally trashed again. But so yeah, that's where we keep a lot of the kids' like art supplies and stuff like that, which works out perfectly since this is where they do a lot of like drawing and painting and crafts and stuff. So there's that. And then these chairs actually are antique ladder back chairs that I modified. I cut the third rung off and then added these wooden balls to the tops. Another piece in here that I really love, just because I've like been looking at this like my whole entire life. This was my grandma's antique chocolate cabinet. So I guess back in the day it would have been used to display like sweets in like a candy shop, which is why it has like the sliding glass door here. But it was like a much darker finish, and it was considerably shorter than this as well, to where like you wouldn't have been able to see it like past the dining table. So I really wanted to use it, and I had it in storage, and unfortunately, because it wasn't climate controlled, like the legs down here, like parts of them like separated and came off. So it kind of needed to be modified anyway, unfortunately, for that reason. But so what I did was I designed a leg based on the legs that were already there. And I found a woodworker on Etsy who created the new legs for me, but made them taller because I knew I wanted the cabinet to sit up higher so you'd actually see it. The back legs, I also replicated just, with lumber that I got at the hardware store. And then, it was like sort of tricky figuring out the finish to make it match the rest of the cabinet. But like it used to be like shellacked and like super dark. So you couldn't even see like any of the pretty details on the drawers or on this here. And so I used citrus strip and I stripped it and refinished it, and then just left the wood natural, just left its natural look, and then sealed it. And then it was just the legs that I had to like find a stain to make it look exactly like how the rest of it looked. But so I refinished this, but it was my grandma's, and then my parents had it when I was little. And then, when I got older, I believe I had it in our first house. My mom gave it to me. I had it in our first house, and then when we remodeled this house, it just felt like it really didn't fit with like the more modern kind of, style that we went with initially when we first remodeled it. So that's why I had it in storage. But now I feel like it fits in beautifully, and I'm really happy that I was able to figure out how to like make it work in our space because, you know, it's sentimental. So I actually got my undergraduate degree in history and political science. And so I wasn't really exactly sure what I wanted to do at that period in time. You know, I was living in LA after I graduated and, you know, worked reception at a couple of different law firms. I worked reception at a talent agency and, you know, just wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to do. And I had actually applied to go to graduate school for interior design because that's something I've just always really been passionate about. Like even since I was little, I would always, you know, rearrange my bedroom all the time and, you know, move my dresser in my bed, you know, from one wall to the other and, you know, was always like setting up things like just so, like styling my dresser. And so that's always just been something that I've just naturally been into. But I had applied to go to grad school in Chicago actually, and I got in, but then I decided to move to LA instead. So I found myself just kind of like, you know, floundering, like didn't really know what to do with myself. Ended up going to grad school for teaching and moved home because I got engaged to my husband and we decided to have a family, and LA is just so expensive. We decided not to stay there. And my family is here in Indiana, where I was born and raised. And so we moved back here and I taught for a couple of years, and then I had my daughter. And then, you know, we got into, you know, renovating houses, and I was a stay-at-home mom at the time and had just had my son, and I just started sharing what I was doing here on Instagram, and one thing led to another. And since then I've, you know, become a full-time content creator, and I do like some client design work, but primarily my main, you know, source of income is content creation. Okay, next I would love to show you into my bedroom. Here's my bedroom. This actually used to be the garage in the house, and the plan when we bought the house, because it was very small. I mean, it's still relatively small. The plan when we initially bought the house, because it was only like 12 or 1,300 square feet, was to for sure turn the garage into additional living space. So that was actually one of the main reasons why we bought the house, because it seemed like it would work out well to be able to convert it, basically. And so when we eventually ended up doing that, it was for the one-room challenge. And I know that I spoke about how we had remodeled the kitchen a second time for the 2021 one-room challenge, I believe it was, or maybe it was 2020 actually, because then I was chosen as a featured designer for that design in the kitchen to do the one-room challenge again. And so this is the room that I chose to do. And so initially it was just an additional living room, and we completely like transformed the space in 8 weeks. Which was pretty wild. You should have seen it before. There were concrete floors, so we actually built a subfloor. Like we put the, you know, the joists down, built the subfloor, did the flooring. So all of it was, this whole entire room is one big DIY project. We had to finish out the walls, we had to finish out the ceiling. I actually designed the molding on the ceiling for the one-room challenge. I did that as a part of that project, and I installed all of it by myself as well. And then I also built the arched built-ins that you see over here. And then the wardrobe over here is actually an IKEA Pax. So it's an IKEA hack that I did and, turned it into what you see here. So this is my closet now. And then, because we also, I always say like a lot of the DIYs that I've done are because I either have something in my head that I really want and I can't find it anywhere, or because we have such a lack of storage here. So this is like one of those, moments where it was like, okay, our old closet in our old bedroom was just not big enough for my husband and me to share. So all of his stuff is in there, and he also gets up like very early for work. So now he just, gets up, goes in there, can turn the lights on, get ready for work, and it doesn't wake me up. And, then also like I have my own, larger closet space. He has his own closet space. So it worked out. Of course, the fireplace was a DIY as well. And it's something that we did when we remodeled the space for the one room challenge during that 8-week period. But initially the fluted pieces on either side, it's actually PVC pipe, which, I don't necessarily recommend using inside your home. I probably would never use it again. But for the amount of time that we had to work with, like it was just not going. And, the idea that I had in mind, like if I were to order custom wood pieces to go there, it would have not only been extremely expensive, but also would have taken longer than the amount of time that we had to work with. So we ended up, just going with PVC. And initially I just painted them. And then this was all just flat, like one flat surface. And I actually had pink terrazzo here, but it was like, and it's like, I feel terrible having covered it up, but at the same time, it was just such a look. Like I had a very hard time like decorating around it, like especially as like my style changed and I realized like more so what I wanted this space to look like once I'd lived with it for a while. So I ended up just covering the whole entire thing with micro cement, including the PVC pipe, to kind of give them more of like a textured look and have them kind of like blend in with the rest of the surface. And then I painted it, and for a minute this was white oak mantelpiece, which I realized is like also, just not really for me necessarily. I wanted color. And so I just painted it all, to kind of look like just one, solid unit. And then recently I did the tile here. It's just like another DIY I did just with paint. It was just like way more cost effective to just paint it, assuming that maybe I'll end up painting it again someday, or deciding to actually commit to tile and doing something totally different. But so that's how we ended up with the fireplace looking as it does now. I would point out that like a lot of the artwork in here, there's like an antique oil painting, and several other like antique framed prints in here also came from my grandpa, who passed away. I think it was like last spring. I can't believe that it's been that long. But this piece in particular, this piece that's over my dresser here, kind of has a cool story. My mom actually found this piece antiquing with my great grandma, and she also just had like impeccable style. Like I think she is probably part of the reason that I ended up so interested in interior design, was just from like visiting her house when I was little and just wandering around and like just looking at all of her beautiful things. And like, I mean, she had one of those houses where it's like you could just like get lost wandering around, like just looking at new things and like see something new every single time you go over, But so anyway, so my mom had been antiquing with her, and she found this painting at an antique store, and my mom really wanted it. And she convinced my dad to buy it, went back to the antique store, and it was gone. And it turned out that my great grandma had actually bought it for herself after the fact. And so it was my great grandma's. And then when she passed away, my mom ended up with it. And then my mom gave it to me. So it's also one of my favorite pieces that I own, like just, from the story behind it. But then also there's just something about it I just find so beautiful. So that's why I have it in my bedroom. I don't know. I feel like your home is like so personal. So maybe just that it's like such a reflection of me, I guess, and the things that I love. And I mean, really just that it's like this like safe space that I've created to like raise my children, and, that they love it so much, and that, it's somewhere that they want to be. I guess that's probably what I love about it the most. Okay, so now we're going to go check out my kids' bedrooms. This is my son's bedroom, also another DIY project of mine that I came up with. I believe it was a couple of years ago now. I can't believe it's been that long. But I know I've mentioned a lot of the DIYs that I do stem from like lack of storage, essentially. And then also just the fact that our house is so small and the bedrooms are so small that I just, have to get really creative trying to figure out the best way to use the space and make it work. And then also have enough storage for, all the toys and all the stuff, And so that's why I came up with what I did in here. A lot of the things that I design are like very Art Deco inspired. And I had like seen pictures of Sowden House in Los Angeles, and I really loved like the sort of neo-Mayan look. And so I decided to incorporate, something similar here. I knew that I wanted it to be like a bed nook. And my son didn't have any shelves for all of his books. And so I wanted to figure out a way to where I could just add all of that on one, side of the room here, so he'd still have room on the floor here to play. And so that's why I came up with the design that I did. I made sure to build the bookshelves in a way to where there'd be, the perfect space for a twin size mattress in the center. And then I raised it up off the ground in a way to where there'd be plenty of storage underneath. So, like if you open the cabinet doors here, there's like suitcases and toys and extra bags and just, like anything that, you can think of that you like don't want to look at all the time. So we keep that kind of stuff stored under there. And then, plenty of shelf space for like some of his favorite things and all of his books. And then I thought it would be fun to, have curtains so he could close it, for a little privacy, which like he actually never does, but maybe when he's older. The only thing that I think I would change if I did it again, I just really don't like these points here, which I wasn't thinking of as I designed it. And luckily he's never like hit his head on it or anything like that. But like if I were to do it again, I probably would just like cut that out and maybe put a rail here or something instead. So when I first did this room and built the bed nook here, I actually painted the whole entire room, walls and ceiling, like this really pretty dark blue color, but it just made it so dark in here. And I realized that my son never spent any time in here. And so recently I decided to lighten it up a bit, and I, repainted everything. Even the bed nook and stuff was painted that super dark blue color. So I, lightened it up with a lighter shade of blue, and then I, decided to do the stripes on the walls. So I painted those and like the contrasting trim color. His favorite color is orange, and I didn't want to use like orange. So I, found this kind of pretty like muted sort of like terracotta-ish color that I decided to use with Pretty Blue, because again, like one of his favorite colors. And this is what I came up with, and I love it. It's like, and he likes it so much better too. He spends more time in here than he did before. I think it was just like maybe a bit too dark, for him previously. But yeah, I just repainted everything like at the end of last year, I think it was, or maybe it was actually this spring. And then I also really like this like fun feature around the light here. Such an easy, like fun accent that literally anybody could do, like even if you don't have, painting experience or whatever. I just took painter's tape and just kind of made just a crazy looking star. Like there's nothing symmetrical about it or anything. Just kind of winged it and, painted over it. And I think it turned out super cute. It's just kind of like a fun asymmetrical kind of element to draw your eye up. So this is my daughter's room, and this is actually the first room that I did. It's been like several years now, and it too was because there was a lack of storage and the room's so small. I wanted to find, a fun, creative way to, she really wanted bunk beds. So initially when I did this, I built the bed up here and put the dresser underneath it for like added storage. It's actually, the frame is actually made of 1x6 or 2x6s. And it's like bolted into the studs on the wall. So it's not going anywhere anyway, but I added the dresser underneath, and then also this, which is fastened to studs in the ceiling for extra support. But then there was actually a bed on the floor here too. So it was like sort of like bunk beds, but because of like how small her room is and the way the, the windows are and like the layout of the windows, if I had put bunk beds in here, they would have been like in front of the windows. So this was like my creative solution for that. And then also like having the dresser here, there's space underneath over here for storage. And at first it was like, a little like, nook that I put like books in and stuff like that, where she could go under there, and there was like fairy lights and stuff, but she never really used it. So it just kind of turned into storage as well. So there's like, stuffed animals and suitcases and, sleeping bags and all kinds of stuff stuffed under there. I did a partnership with Sherwin-Williams. And so I was using some of their color mix forecast paint colors, and I came up with this like wallpaper design. So I hand painted the walls in here. And so as a part of like that remodel, we also did away with the lower bunk, and I built this desk situation right here for her instead. This area right here, was just like, okay, there used to be like a little bed frame here and like a mattress. So it was like, what am I going to do with this extra space? And like, she has so many books. So, I thought, okay, well, she can put books on her shelves above her desk, and then also, books. And this whole space was covered in knickknacks yesterday. So she's very much like a collector and loves to display stuff. So for me, like I said, home is like a place to express my creativity. So that, but then also home is like family to me. And, a safe space for my family and for my children.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.